Good afternoon. Welcome to the press center of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. Here is the weekly update of the situation in the operations area of the Joint Forces from 17th to 23rd June 2019. During the last week, the situation in the JFO area has escalated dramatically. The Russian occupation forces have significantly increased the number of ceasefire violations. The enemy used weapons which are prohibited by the Minsk agreements. 152 mm artillery systems, 120 and 82 mm mortars were used to shell the JFO positions. Moreover, the Russian occupation forces used small arms, grenade launchers, heavy machine guns, anti-tank missiles, and other infantry weapons. Over the past week, from the 17th to 23rd June 2019, Ukrainian defenders' position fell under provocative fire by the Russian occupation forces for 177 times. Thus, on June 17th, the enemy used 120 and 82 mm mortars for 4 times. On June 18th, the Russian occupation forces has fired 44 120 and 82 mm mines against the JFO positions. What is more, on June 20th, the enemy has used 120 and 82 mm mortars for 5 times. Over June 21st and 22nd, the enemy has fired more than 160 120 and 82 mm mines. On June 23rd, in violation of the Minsk agreements, the Russian occupation forces used prohibited 152 mm artillery systems for 5 times to shell the JFO positions near Novoluhansk. We want to stress your attention that the Russian occupation forces, disregarding the international humanitarian law and norms, continued to shell civilian infrastructure which threatens life and well-being of the civilian population. On June 18th, the Russian occupation forces has shelled industrial infrastructure near Dolomitne village in Donetsk region using automatic grenade launchers. On June 20th, the enemy has shelled Chermalik village, which is near Mariupol, with anti-tank systems, anti-aircraft guns, and small arms. As the result, 2 houses were damaged, an old woman was injured. At the same time, the Russian occupation forces continue to falsely accuse and discredit the joint forces. The situation in the operation area is under full control of the joint forces. Our servicemen opened fire in response to suppress enemy activity and by strictly adhering to Minsk agreements. As the result of the Russian armed aggression, 18 of our servicemen were wounded in action and 5 got combat trauma. They were all transferred to military medical facilities where they are being treated. We want to inform with grief that 3 servicemen were killed while defending their country in the east of Ukraine. We express our sincerest condolences to families and loved ones of our deceased defenders. And now to the information from the Defense Intelligence of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. The Russian Occupation Command continues to keep the weapons which are prohibited by the Minsk agreements, namely artillery system, tanks and mortars, in a combat readiness and in a close proximity to the front line. At the same time, the number of training sessions for artillery adjustment and mortar units has increased by the active Russian personnel. Moreover, the Russian Occupation Forces Command neglects safety of the civilian population in the temporarily occupied territories, which has led to increase in number of deaths and disabilities. Many civilians are recorded to become victims of mines and booby traps. On June 15th, a local man has died because of mine explosion in Gorlivka. And now to the other news. On June 20th, during the working trip to Dnipro region, Minister of Defense of Ukraine Stepan Poltorak visited the defense industry enterprises involved in development of the rockets and missiles for Vilkha and Neptune systems. Stepan Poltorak praised the work which was done and stressed that such missiles will help to enhance capabilities of the armed forces of Ukraine to protect their country. Also, Stepan Poltorak got acquainted with the progress of development of the multifunctional rocket complex Sapsan, which is developed by the Pivdenne Design Bureau. The military delegation of the European Union, headed by the chairman of the EU Military Committee, General Claudio Graziano, held a working trip to Ukraine. During the trip, General Graziano met with the Chief of the General Staff, Lieutenant General Ruslan Khomchak, and visited the JFO operation area. During his visit, General Graziano got acquainted with the current security situation in the area and the evidences of the presence of the Russian armed forces in the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine. Also, EU delegation was informed on current demining situation and activities in the region. Chief of the General Staff of the British Armed Forces, General Sir Mark Carlton Smith, visited Ukraine this week and held a series of meetings with the Chief of General Staff, General Ruslan Khomchak, Commander of the Army, General Serhiy Popko, and the Commander of the Joint Forces Operation, Lieutenant General Alexander Sainsky. Also, during his working trip, General Mark Carlton Smith visited JFO operation area. This is all information for now. Thank you for your attention. Glory to Ukraine. Captain Sharvara Mikhailov from the Press Center of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine.